I'm also having the opportunity to build our relationship. So today I'm going to talk about how to build anti-racist community through land-based learning and practice in a community garden. So basically going to talk about what does the anti-racist community mean from the community perspective that I have learned from Saskatoon last 10 years, and challenges in anti-racist community through land-based learning and practice, and why and how we should take responsibility to build community in the focus of anti-racist community. So first I would like to situate that currently I'm living in the Treaty 7 territory. However, I was living at Treaty 6 territory last 10 years. And the today experience that I'm going to share is from the Treaty 6 territory. So all my respect and my gratitude to all Indigenous people in Canada at Treaty 6 territory. And little bit background about me. I born and raised at minority communities in Bangladesh. When I'm saying minority, is ethnic minority, not mainstream Muslim people. So we have been displaced many times from our land. I lost my family member because we wanted to protect our land rights. So meaning of land is meaning of our body, meaning of our family, meaning of our God, which has been pushed back for a long time. So I had opportunity to work with various indigenous community in Bangladesh, even in India, and had opportunity to work with Sami indigenous community in Finland, Norway, and I had currently last year working with the Cree First Nation, Dene, Inuit, and Métis communities. And I can speak my own language and very beginner in Cree. One of the elder actually helping me to learn in Cree because they consider me and actually we as a family as a relative, because when we talk about land-based learning, we become relational with the people and with the land. So I'm very grateful to having this opportunity. So basically, again, going to talk about my 10 years journey, and even actually my whole life journey. What does the community mean, and what are the challenges that community, from the community perspective, and how to solve those. And I'm a researcher last 10 years. I was trying to understand how we can transform our understanding and learning into a action so that we can see the change and community also can see the change. So before we go into a very concrete level, I would like to share what does actually anti-racist community mean from and within cross-cultural perspective. Cross-cultural, I meant is transnational, transgender, and transgenerational. So the meaning of anti-racist community that I have learned from my whole life, like 20 years. So a couple of the perspective I would like to share when we are talking about community building or cross-cultural community building. So what does the cross-cultural perspective in anti-racist community building? First, that I have learned that when we are talking about cross-cultural community building, we cannot talk without learning about indigenous land rights. So our community and the community in Saskatchewan, even community that I'm working for all over the world, that land rights is the one of the central part we need to understand as a color settler or settler here for deep understanding of anti-racist community. Second is we need to decolonize our ways of knowing, ways of doing, because the anti-racist community building or community building is a lifelong journey. It's not an event. So knowing what is the challenging within the land, within the people, and also not only learning what are the challenges, also need to relearn how we can reclaim as a community, how we can build solidarity as a community, as a part of our responsibility. So that's why decolonize is one of the significant part when we are talking about cross-cultural community or anti-racist community. Another aspect is we need to learn, think about the history, not only from the colonial perspective. We have to think about history from thousands years. That people, language, culture has been living sustainable way for 1,000 years here. So that's why we need to understand the indigenous ways of knowing and doing as a scientific ways of doing. And we have to incorporate those scientific learning in our Western ways of doing as well. So we have to take the responsibility to understand what are the Truth and Reconciliation Commission call for action, 94 call for action. What does it mean? How I as an individual, we as a community can take part of this meaningful implication of TRC call for action. Another important part is bridging between cross-cultural learning and practice. So it's not only learning who we are, also need to understand how we can incorporate those learning into our practice. The last part, but not least important, as a community, we have to understand, we have to reclaim and protect the meaning of land, meaning of water, meaning of culture, and the language, so that we can create the belongingness, because this is also our responsibility to protect land that we are living. So in my 20 years life, that when I started to understand from my bachelor life, that as we have seen that there are many ways of understanding or building the community, cross-cultural community. Now I would like to share some of the perspective that I have learned from my own community and from the community that I am living last 20 years. What are the challenges that community has been facing? The first challenges that I have seen is miscommunication. That indigenous community, they don't know what is the development. Even though indigenous community, they have been using the concept of development for thousands years, different way, a holistic way to living in a way that human and non-human can live together. The current ways of development, just 200 or 300 years, and look at it. The millions of years, the way that the concept of development came up, it didn't destroy the whole ecosystem. Now the neoliberal system or greediness of human is destroying everything, and we are thinking, oh, the people, those who are living traditional way, they don't know what is the meaning of development. So this is one of the misconception or misunderstanding. Actually, many people we are having, even as a color settler, when we came as an immigrant here, we have lots of misconception about indigenous people, their relationship with the land, relationship with the culture. So those misconception, one of the significant barrier for building community in particularly Saskatchewan last 10 years I have seen. Another way of understanding, fail to decolonize. We think as a researcher or a educator or as a community, as scholar settler, we think, oh, we came here to contribute, and we came here in the land that white developed it. So in our citizenship test, we have seen the fighting white versus other white, and we didn't have that much opportunity to learning about the people of the land, the culture and language. So that's why we don't know how to decolonize, many of us. And even though we know, we have very static mindset that we don't want to decolonize. So failing of decolonization is one of another significant challenge in community building. And we always refuse to indigenous self-governance. And we learn from the education system, our institutional system, our religious structure. So all those structure actually structurally creating the barriers for learning about indigenous people, learning about who I am in this land. Another important factor is that I have came through last 10 years, the collaborative approach, lack of collaborative approach. So even you think about, I came from environment sustainability sociology. Within the sociology department, there are many varieties, thousands of ways of doing. But whenever we are thinking about community, we think we can talk only with a couple of elders or knowledge keepers or couple of community, then we are done. I know everything. We have seen the folk fetch, so I know what is the Bangladeshi culture it is. Actually, we don't know 90% of it. So all those issues, generalization or misconception, yet many, I would say, resist our mentality. So that's why it's the one of the another significant issue is lack of collaborative approach. And also I as a color settler, I didn't know that much, didn't have that much opportunity in my university, in my community, to learning about that settler colonialism. The same as in my own country, many mainstream people, they don't know indigenous history. So whatever they are doing, they are justifying with their colonial system, colonial ways of life. That's why settler colonialism, ongoing settler colonialism is also another significant challenge. And we think that the racism is history, racism is past, but we don't understand the structure that we are living, individual structure, structural structure, or systematic, but the racism, racial structure that we are living. We most time we deny those that racism is alive in everyday practice. So those are the significant challenges that I came to is mainly important the important issue to understanding how to build community, how to build cross-cultural community. But without understanding those challenges, it's difficult to understand what does the community mean, how to build those challenges. So the presentation I'm talking this last 10 years, and it came from my own relationship with the land that I was living, the land as my mother, land as my body, land as my spiritual understanding. So we used to pray every day to the land. So it's kind of relational. Why this relational is important for understanding community building? Because once we understand relational, it means we become responsible to each other. So it is not we versus others. This is our problem, our issue. We have to solve those issues together. That's why I call it relational theoretical framework and methodology, because it's make me responsible on my own learning and own actions. So methodology that I was using last 10 years is my own reflection, what I have learned, how I have learned, how my learning helped me to reshape, how my learning to decolonize myself. So it's kind of, you can say, it's critical reflection about me, my responsibility. So a couple of other methods that I have been using from my own learning, I consider elder knowledge keeper as a scientist, because scientist for the community, scientist for their own knowledge. I'm not saying that elder or knowledge keeper that I'm learning, they are the scientists for all over the world. They are the scientists for the community because they are carrying important knowledge for their land, for their generation. So in my stories, I learned from indigenous elder and knowledge keeper stories, learning from music, art, dance, and also using the blanket exercise, learning about the colonial history of Canada from the indigenous people. In the same time, I was using cross-cultural storytelling. That means learning from the various culture, various generation, and I always keep my own journal. It's called Commonplace Book. Commonplace Book is similar to that everyday diary, but it's more about critical reflection. What I'm learning about art, drawing, is kind of more critical reflection. So these are the method I have used the last 10 years. So I was trying to understand what is the meaning of land-based practice, and learning one of the elders from Dene First Nation communities in Fond du Lac that I was working to environmental justice. The elder, who is 97 years old, he said, I'm 97 years old. I'm going to die soon. I'm going to die with many successful, sustainable stories that many of our young generation, they don't know. He's saying land is not only for human, the scientific sense that we can own, we can sell, land is everything. And I requested him, if you can explain a little bit more. Then he actually told a yarn to write about, okay, write about meaning of land. How do you understand the meaning of land? So one of 9 grade students, he wrote, draw an art, the meaning of land. His meaning of land is water, sun, moon, caribou, plant, insect, everything. So that's why we need to understand what is the land mean? Why my relationship with the land is important for me, for my family, for my community. So the building a anti-racist community, we invited various elders in our community garden. Regarding when I'm saying our community garden, the community we have actually we have seen 2011 with 10 family members from 3 different countries. In 2018, it became 120 community garden plot with 28 different countries. In our community garden, we had opportunity to build a transnational community from anti-racist perspective, because the community garden was right beside the residential building at the University of Saskatchewan, and it was the community people from the various countries, mostly from international students. We had 4 community plot for food bank, and also other community who can with whom we can share. In the same time, we invited indigenous knowledge keeper and elders to come to our community garden, share their experience about community garden, why we as a color settler need to know the importance of the native plant, how we are connected with the native plant, how we should take care of the native plant. So one of the example was indigenous elder knowledge keeper. They used to come and share their knowledge, the importance of the plant, importance of the soil, and how to understand the relationship with from the indigenous knowledge perspective. As you can see another picture, photos that indigenous youth, they are teaching color settler or refugee communities about the colonial history through the blanket exercise. The blanket exercise, for the most colored people, they didn't know what does it mean. When they were actually showing it practically, the community, they are connecting with their own story. Those who actually displaced many times like us, it was easy to understand the land we are working, the land we are living, how to build our own belonging with this land. And this land is also my responsibility. So blanket exercise was very helpful for understanding those relationships and our responsibility. And when we had a community garden, we just didn't limit ourselves in our own community garden plot. So we, indigenous elder knowledge keeper, they invited us to visit various indigenous land or community garden. In that time, one is Queen Heritage Park. They had also community garden. In that community garden, they were explaining the traditional food, importance of the traditional food, traditional ways of growing, so that the various immigrant communities, refugee, and the settler, we had opportunity to go and learn directly from the indigenous elder or gardener from the indigenous land. So in that time, we had opportunity to learn why, as a color settler, we need to be part of the reclaiming struggle, how we need to build our solidarity through indigenous learning. So, and indigenous when we went over there many times, not only learning about community garden, understanding why traditional ways of growing food or cooking is important for the young generation. So building relationship in building community is also building relationship with the community garden, with the land, with the insect, also very important part in our community garden. So in our community garden in 2008, we had almost more than 120 children, those who are very interconnected with the community garden. So children were learning how to build relationship with the birds, butterfly, ladybirds, and soil, plant directly from the community garden. So as you can see, children were learning what is the meaning of relationship with the plant they are putting, how this plant is connected with their own parents, own ancestral culture. So not only indigenous elder and knowledge keepers sharing their stories. So one of the another opportunity we had, most of the international students, parents, grandparents, they used to come visit us. So whenever we had a garden, the grandparents, they used they spend time mostly in the community garden and sharing their own story, how they used to grow food or the plant to the very young children. So our community garden became an intergenerational learning from their own grandparents or the different grandparents from different country, and in the same time indigenous elder and skippers. As you can see, children were trying to digging out the worm and trying to find out why worm is important for the soil. And there are also many students that did project on community garden, and they share in their school. As you can see, the relationality they are showing, the joy they are when they are harvesting with the in their community garden. And we have a couple of plots we didn't cultivate anything. The reason we didn't cultivate anything because we wanted to keep some plot as it is, so that there is a bee, the butterfly, they can enjoy those kind of, as we call it, weed. And weed became the very important part of the bees and the butterfly and other insects. So it's all the collective, the community ways of knowing also became important part of the children. Children were learning from the educators and also from their own parents the importance of the community garden. And they were also learning why recycling is important. And the many children, they ask us question why people are creating grass instead of community garden in their yard, because they are these are children, they are asking many questions about this for this our community garden. So building community was starting with the children, because of the children, parents used to come, parents were very interested to learn as well. And you can see the children were digging their own plot. We had almost 4 or 5 plots for the children, and children, they used to choose what they need to do and how they need to do and what they need to do. And also when the harvest was coming on, they were also learning how those food is important for the various culture. And in our community garden, it became anti-racist community opportunity, because we had opportunity to create music from the various part of the country, to learning about how music and the relationship with the land are very important. So that's why the community garden that we have been doing, it became part who we are actually in our residence building for last 8-9 years. And children were drawing different parts of the community foods, community ways of doing, and learning why this particular food is important, one particular plant is important. When they were drawing, they were learning the stories from their own parents and also from different parents, and also same time learning from the indigenous elder and keepers. And at the same time, we are celebrating food from the various countries. At the beginning, when we were dividing the plot, it was very kind of artificial boundaries. But when the food was growing, the artificial boundaries, when the learning coming from the various elder knowledge keeper and intergenerational culture, intergenerational and transnational culture, the boundary disappeared. People love to share, people love to learn. So that's why we call our community garden is the anti-racist community building space. And we share our food, we tell stories, we learn stories, we dance, we enjoy together. And also talking about, it's also became a space for people are those who are coming from various countries in summer program. They also had opportunity to learn those the importance of cross-cultural knowledge and practice, and in connection with the indigenous land-based knowledge in Canada. So it became kind of laboratory for open sky laboratory for various international students. And as you can see, the children were learning why bee is important for their own learning, why bee is important for their everyday life. So they were growing different kind of bee and connecting with their own life. And as you can see, there is another photos that so drawing. The children were learning drawing from their own learning and connecting with their own stories. And as you can see, another children though they draw the butterfly and other kind of insect and connecting with their own stories. And so building anti-racist community through land-based is knowing is all about that we are all 3D people. We have responsibility, then we need to take responsibility. Is not kind of the responsibility we are taking for others. Responsibility for building community was for us to creating our empowerment, to knowing the history of the land, knowing history of the people. So that's why our community garden have been actually very significant part as a learning space for building our community. So from last 8 years, from my last 9 years, because last year we were not able to do any community garden because particularly for me, because I had to move for my work purpose. So last 9 years that I was learning how to build community, why community is important, who I am. And a couple of significant issues I learned from my indigenous elder knowledge keeper, elder from the various transnational communities, and from our own learning. And some of the part have been very significant for me to understanding. To whenever we are thinking about community building, first we need to think who we are, where we came from. When I'm saying where we came from, it's not about country. What is the mindset I came from? What is my learning? How my learning is helping me to reshape me? Who owns the land that we work or currently live in? What does the decolonization mean to us? Because decolonization, reconciliation, these are all buzzwords. But how I can understand through my own community activities, own unlearning, learning, unlearning, and relearning. And what is the history of the Canada? How we can take responsibility to learn individually, as a family, as a community. So the community garden help us to know all those, all the history of the colonial, about Indian Act, about residential school, about 60 schools, and what did colonizer did with the indigenous people. Why it is important for me, so that I can and not only enrich my learning, but also know who I am and what I should do. How does reconciliation look like for me? Even the sharing and the story with all of you is became part of my responsibility. And you as a participant or listener, you also became part of became relative or became responsible to share what you have learning and also practicing. So, and also as a color settler here, what we can do to build environmental justice through land-based learning and land-based ways of doing. So that's why we need to redefine our responsibility, our action, our learning from our everyday life. And if various indigenous elder knowledge giver, they know what to do because they have been living in this land for thousands years. So they gave us the solution. So, and I as a color settler, I had opportunity to learning those knowledge and practicing in our everyday life. For example, knowing the importance of indigenous land rights, knowing the TRC call for action, and understanding why indigenous self-governance, self-determination important. When I'm saying indigenous self-determination, it's also my self-determination. And we need to understand the indigenous knowledge that has been sustainable for 1,000 years. It doesn't need validation from the Western science because it's already proven. So what we need to know, we need to rethink what is actually science mean and relearn it, practice it in a different way. And one of the important issues I learned from my own community, that indigenous people that don't deny Western ways of learning, Western ways of doing. So they want to use Western ways or Western science to solve their problem. And land-based, in our land-based practice, in our community community buildings, we have seen how we can implement. And protecting indigenous language and culture is also part of learning or community building. Honoring, creating space for indigenous knowledge system to flourish, to become part of our responsibility as well. And also we need to build our consciousness to learn from various communities, understand importance of the not only land-based learning is also connected with the language from various cultures. It's not only music and dance that we see in the folk fest. We have to go and learn in deeper way so that we can understand why the land-based learning is important for all of us and including me. So I'm doing my research I'm a researcher. So I'm thinking how my research can help first of all, for me and also for my community. So when I'm saying that my community, you also part of my community. So we also need to consider whatever profession we are doing, we need to rethink how we can create or become agent of change. So become change maker for me, for my family and the community and the land we are in. So these are the very significant part that I have learning from my whole life actually. So for challenging again overcoming the challenges that the very first time I was sharing, these are the challenges that I have learned. So indigenous people or the land-based learning, they have solution. We need to relearn how to bridge between cross-cultural communities, our own learning, and how to honor, respect indigenous and cross-cultural complexities, because we need to understand that knowledge varies according to land, community to community, generation to generation, nation to nation. And those diversity or multiple ways of knowing are not actually barrier. They are the beauty of the knowledge. They are the opportunity for learning how we can build a community from multiple perspectives. And I see every day is a gift, every opportunity is a So learning from the cross-cultural community, learning from the indigenous communities is opportunity for me. And also acknowledging that the concept of land has very many meanings, many relational meanings. For example, it can be family member, it can be friend, it can be my body. And those epistemological pluralism is significant part for our decolonizing our ways of knowing, our ways of doing. And of course, we need to understand how we can engage cross-cultural community in our discussion, in our community build discussion. And as we learn, it always reshape or recreate the community. And this is the beauty of the knowledge. Engaging community-based decision making. So in our community building, it's not only one time or 1 year we did. It says last 9 years, even my whole life, it's an ongoing process. It's a lifelong process, and we have to start somewhere. So when we started in 2011, we had only 4 garden plots, and with 11 participants. And in 2018 or 19, it became 120 garden plots with 400 adults and 120 kids. So we have to start from from me actually to building this whole circle, considering our ways of doing and practicing is a capacity building for all of us. Capacity building for building solidarity. This is more than allyship. In allyship, kind of, we have a choice. We become part of the ally or not. But in solidarity, we become responsible to our relationship, to the land, to the people, or to the community that we are working. And understanding the community needs in whatever we are working on, whatever we are doing on. So, and rethinking our learning is as action for me, for my own empowerment, for my own self-determination, and my own belongings. So I would like to acknowledge the University of Saskatchewan giving me opportunity. I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to learn Indigenous elder knowledge keeper and cross-cultural communities and community partners the last 10 years. And as I said before, every day is gift, every opportunity is gift. And I'm becoming every day. And my land-based learning giving me this opportunity. So thank you so much for listening to my stories, and hope one day I will listen to your story.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I wondered if there were questions from those listening. If you would like to, you can use the little raise hand button and we can unmute you and you can come on and ask your question in person. And I'm noticing there are a few questions in the chat as well, so we'll take a look at those. So there's one question from Jolie in the chat that says, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your ability to build community, and how have you been able to adapt?
This is a significant question because when COVID-19 started, we were living in a community. It's from 72 different families, almost from, I would say, 15 to 20. And last 10 years, we didn't feel that we are not connected. We always felt that we are connected. They are our family members. But when COVID-19 came out, many mistrust actually created from the media, from our surrounding, and it became very challenging. It's very hopeless time because we cannot talk with our next door. We cannot talk. We are passing by the whole 10 years. We are very connected. Suddenly, we are distrusting. So lots of distrust and also wrong information came to the community. So what I did, I asked elder and knowledge keeper what we should do in that time. And we as a family went to the land, we went to the river work, and I personally didn't have that much opportunity to sharing my story with my own child. So I used to walk in the riverside when used to go to the various indigenous land, talking about my stories, why this land is important, what is my mom's story, my grandmom's story. So the learning opportunity from indigenous elders, giving me opportunity to share my indigenous stories, my land-based stories with my own, my daughters. And interestingly, they wrote their own reflection, what they have learned, and it got published from University of Toronto Press, and they draw many arts as well in that article. So the COVID-19 created many challenges, but land-based learning helped us to how to cope, how to reclaim my own story that I didn't have opportunity that time.
That really resonates with me as well. I know I found being out on the land and being in my garden very healing and very important during the COVID times. And I hear what you're saying about it being a time to reflect on stories and share that sort of internal stories with your children and your family. Oh, it looks like there's somebody in the question and answer next here. So Sean is asking, which Indigenous elders and knowledge keepers would you recommend approaching for this type of project?
In our 9 years journey, we asked many Indigenous elder knowledge keepers from various communities. And it's not any particular elder or knowledge keepers. Which elder or knowledge keeper would be appropriate? I would say ask the indigenous friend networks or indigenous elders. They know who would be the appropriate, or they may, as I experience, knowledge varies elder to elders, and it's not any kind of straightforward way. This elder knows better than the other elders. It's very different. So whenever I have opportunity to learn the elders, and I learn very different way when one elder is coming and different elders coming. So I approach many elders and I ask them who would be appropriate. Or sometimes, if some people they don't know the story, it is the fault of the system. The fault of the system of the residential school, fault of the system of Indian Act. And this that people they don't know, they tell the story they don't know. It is also opportunity to learn how the colonization impacted to the indigenous people.
I think there's another question here as well. So Deborah asks, how do we begin to connect with Indigenous communities and other populations? What's the best route?
I start personally from my own personal relationship with I used to go to the blanket exercise or sweat loss, or ask my indigenous friend if I can participate in any of their events. And there are many indigenous organizations in Saskatchewan, for example, White Buffalo and Indian Métis centers. And if we can express them, they're interested actually to share their knowledge. It's not that they don't want. Issue is there is problem that there is a huge gap between even my own community, the community I'm representing. They also have many misconceptions. Many times they actually told me, why you are doing this? What is the benefit of you? And they say, why you are fighting for the indigenous people rights? This is not yours. We came here to contribute. So all of this misconception came up because they don't know. They didn't have that much opportunity. I was representing also various settlement organizations. They are huge. But most of the settlement organization, they don't know the indigenous history, they don't have indigenous staff, and there is a huge gap also within settlement organization and also within the community. So that's why I face personally many challenges from my own community and my education system, and also the community in Saskatchewan. So what I did, I built my relationship with my indigenous friend. And before I coming from Toronto to Saskatchewan, I had lots of wrong information about Saskatchewan west side. Don't go west side. But whatever I learned from my indigenous mentors, indigenous elder, knowledge keeper, they became one of my best friend, my best mentor. So I would say start with building relationship with the community, respecting, honoring the knowledge, and you have many friends in your network. So ask them; they will be the good source how to build relationship, how to start, where to start.
I think that's a very good point. I think it's very encouraging that those of you attending are asking these kinds of questions. I think that's very good questions to be asking, and thank you for your answers. I think it's very good advice to reach out to your networks. Is a good place to start. Are there any other folks listening who'd like to ask questions? Oh, I've just seen one pop up from Annette. So the question is, I'm not sure if I understand the question, but I'll read it off and see if it rings true. It says, are all Indigenous people planning for food security?
Before I talk about food security, I need to make distinction between food security and food sovereignty. Food security, if that means you don't have access in the food that you need. But food sovereignty is about empowering me, building my self-determination, building my network, becoming part of the struggle to protecting land, water, or creating learning the story of where is the food coming from, or how it is. I'm also becoming responsible. So, question about food security is not about indigenous people only. I think as a color settler, it should come to, for me first, what is the food sovereignty mean? How I can create food sovereignty for me and my community, so that my generation, my future generation, they know how food is going, how food is creating, how food is connected. So food security food sovereignty is very important issue to learning for indigenous people. Many times they've brought this issue, and same time they are very careful to making a differentiation between food security and food sovereignty. That's why I call food sovereignty. The community garden is not source of food security, it's food sovereignty, because we learn stories, we learn build network, we know the various culture. So community garden is source of the food sovereignty. Mm-hmm. And of course, food security is one part of the umbrella.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've not thought about it in that way before, but I think it rings true to me. You're right, community gardens being a food sovereignty initiative. I did want to just mention my colleague Jordan, who's in the call, is working with CHEP. He's our Indigenous Food Sovereignty Coordinator. Jordan, I don't want to put you on the spot. If you have anything to add, you're more than welcome to chime in. I just wanted to make sure that I recognized you as the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Facilitator at our organization. So thanks for being here too.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. It's it's not my presentation.
Yeah, cool.
I'm loving listening. Great job, Ranjan.
Any other folks have questions? Any other folks here have questions or comments or anything they'd like to share? Got a thank you in the chat. I had wondered, I know you've moved recently. Have you been gardening in your new home yet? Have you had that opportunity?
We have been missing Saskatchewan a lot because of the community. We didn't have any opportunity to build community here because of the COVID. So, but we are looking for it. We already know the community garden is also a significant part of the Calgary. So we are looking for the opportunity. And as I say, it may take time. So we are starting to having this opportunity. And we were already facing these challenges that without community, actually, community is our family. So we need to find it out, how to build a community. It took us 10 years to build our community, understanding importance of cross-cultural community building, learning about indigenous ways, learning about indigenous ways. Not that I'm saying that I've learned. I'm in the process of learning for me. So it took us 10 years to learning this process, and it's maybe lifelong process. So since we have this learning background, maybe it will be easier to build community here in Calgary.
It does take time, that's for sure. I do see someone else is asking where they can buy your book.
I have one book actually recently came up, and it is written from the cross-cultural perspective. It's called Reconciliation in Practice. So in Saskatchewan, the various community from the colored settler perspective, settler, indigenous people, we all came together, and we since we have been doing this work for a long time, we said, why not we write our reflection? What does actually decolonization mean to us? What does the reconciliation mean to us? Is that reconciliation an event or is a responsibility? What does it mean for me? So we wrote a book. It's called Reconciliation in Practice. It is available in Robinson bookstore at 8th Street. So yeah.
McNally Robinson?
McNally, yeah.
I just typed the title in the chat there so folks can have a look for it. Thanks for that. Well, thank you again for your presentation this evening. I really appreciated the conversation and the questions. Thanks to all who attended. I have always admired your work in that particular garden. It's a very special space, and I know you put a lot of time and energy into it. So thank you for that. And I'm sure that there's lots in Calgary that is going to be community built from your work as well. So thank you again for being here and for being part of our presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having this opportunity. It means a lot for me because sharing what we have learned is also part of the decolonization.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. I am just going to share my own screen because I did want to let folks know about the other presentations happening this week. So I'm just going to do that. And hopefully folks can see that. So we have on March 25th, which is this Thursday, 7 to 9 p.m. pesticide-free gardening workshop. And that's presenter name is Sarah Williams. It's a partnership with Gardening at USask. You can register if you go to our website, chep.org, and you just scroll down the main page. There's a registration link. You'll see the same schedule posted there, and there's a registration link. We're also booked for a full day or a full afternoon on Saturday with several presentations here that you can attend during the day on Saturday as well. And thanks again, folks, for coming out tonight. It means a lot for us to be able to run CD Saturday in this way. The other thing I will mention, if anyone did not have an opportunity to attend with us on Saturday, we did launch our seed exchange with the Saskatoon Public Library. So you can head over to any of the local library locations and find seed packets there that you can take and trade and exchange. You can bring back ones that you maybe didn't use all of them up by the end of the season last year. And we hoped it was a way to bring in some of that same Seedy Saturday feeling and exchange and swapping that happens with the seeds in a way that was COVID friendly, in a way that we could do that. So we're hoping to bring the seeds to you in your library. So I would welcome you to do that as well. But thanks so much for sticking out with us, and hope to see some of you in the other talks later in the week. But we're going to sign off for now. So thanks again and have a lovely evening.